As of currently, it is December 29th. I want to have this video up by January 1st, which means I'm going to have to bust my fucking ass editing this one. So hopefully if you watched the last video I made, this should be pretty self-explanatory, whereas instead of talking about individual songs, I'm going to be talking about full-fledged albums. Now the definition of album might be a little bit loose. There are a couple projects in here that could technically be considered EPs if you want to pull strings like that. I don't really want to, so I'm just going to include whatever I don't think is explicitly determined as an EP. Very quickly, before we do that, I do want to give a couple honorable mentions. The first four I want to mention are After Hours by The Weeknd, Goat by Polo G, Good News by Megan Thee Stallion, and Fleet Foxes with Shore. The last one I want to mention is the new Blue in Exile project, only because it's a very long listen, and full disclosure, have not finished it yet. What I have listened to it, I've loved, that's why I'm mentioning it, but just wanted to put that out there so you don't think I'm ignoring one of the most acclaimed projects by the hip-hop community, both on YouTube and Twitter. Hey, me editing this, so I just listened to the new Yves Tumor album for the first time in like 7 months, and wow, that should totally be on here. It's a little late now, but keep note of that. With that said, let's start the top 40. Starting off this list with number 40, we have I Disagree by Poppy. At number 39, we have Things I Never Said by Oceanator. A little rough around the edges, but overall very pleasant, enjoyable listen. Number 38, we have Pop Smoke, R.I.P. with Meet the Woo 2. You could also put Shoot for the Stars here. I wouldn't argue with you. I just like this project a little bit better. Number 37, we have IDK with IDK and Friends 2. Number 36, we have Black Thought with his new project, Stream of Thought 3. While you can definitely noticeably feel the aspects of Questlove that are lacking in Black Thought's solo material, he still proves time and time again why he's one of the historically best MCs in the game. Number 35, we have Backwash with their project, God Has Nothing to Do with This, Leave Him Out of It. Number 34, we have West Side Gun with either Pray for Paris or Who Made the Sunshine. Personally, I find the track list on Who Made the Sunshine a little more consistent, but I appreciate and respect the themes of Pray for Paris more. So again, this is another kind of interchangeable spot for me. At number 33, we have another very high potential artist that unfortunately passed away, that being King Von with his project Welcome to O Block. To me, it just feels like a very essential, very bare bones and consistent Chicago drill project, and I really appreciate it for that, so that's why it's here. At number 32, we have Spillage Village with Spillagian. At number 31, we have 21 Savage with Savage Mode 2. This one's unique in that when I first heard it, it was probably more in like the 50s range of albums that I listened to this year, but as the past 2 months have elapsed, it's grown on me a lot more. And it might grow on me even more. I don't know. We'll have to see, I guess. I'm giving the number 30 spot to Oliver Tree with his first full-length EP, Ugly is Beautiful. At number 29, we're going to give it to Code Orange for Underneath. Full disclosure, did not listen to a lot of metal this year, but in terms of the project I did listen to, this one felt the most forward-thinking, the most energetic, the most innovative, and I respect it a lot for that. For the number 28 spot, we have Joywave with their new LP Possession. Next at number 27, we have Phoebe Bridgers with their project Punisher. I think there's some overall consistency issues, but the tracks I like on this album I really fucking like. Next we have Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist with Alfredo. This is another one that grew on me as time went on, well, not to the same degree as Savage Mode 2. A big part of that is I just started liking Freddie Gibbs in general more over the course of the past few months. Number 25, we have Red Veil with Niagara, the project that blew him up this year. This was definitely one of my favorite produced albums of the year. I absolutely love the way he flips these specific soul samples and introduces some trap elements you wouldn't normally expect from an Earl Sweatshirt ripoff. For the number 24 spot, we have Amine with his new project Limbo. I think Amine proves himself a much more capable lyricist than people initially gave him credit for, and I also really enjoy the production on this project as a whole. Number 23, we have Jay Electronica with A Written Testimony. At number 22, we have Clipping with Visions of Bodies Being Burned. I definitely liked There Existed more. I think it had a much more consistent feel, but this one still has that same vibe, that same aesthetic. Not to mention that Diggs' rapping is still as charismatic as it was the past 3 Clipping projects. For number 21, we have Conway the Machine with From a King to a god. If you watched my video about Griselda, I definitely didn't give this album as much credit as it deserves. I've kind of retroactively realized that now. Conway's lyricism is phenomenal. The production does a great job. I think he does a very good job of not distancing himself from Griselda, but establishing himself as more than just a piece of the collective, as an entity of his own, in a sense. For number 20, we have Beach Bunny with their new project, Honeymoon. I just have a really good time listening to this one, and if you're gonna give me shit for that, fuck you. For number 19, we have Phil with Microphones in 2020. Technically, I also could have put this one on my list of songs, but I don't want to be redundant and just talk about the exact same talking points with this track, and I think it fits better in the album so I can give more acknowledgement to songs that might not otherwise get it. But despite how a 40-minute track with the exact same progression looping over and over and over again might sound, Phil executes it wonderfully for what it actually is. It just really takes a master of the craft to not only conceptualize that, but then also make it good. At number 18, we have Song Machine Season 1 Strange Times by the Gorillaz. For number 17, we have Fiona Apple with her new Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Fiona Apple is just such an amazing pianist, and just adding her specific vocal style off to these insane piano parts just leads to some incredibly entertaining tracks. Not even to mention the songs like Newspaper, which don't even feature much piano but are still just as off-kilter and weird, and I think it's just an excellent project overall. At number 16, we have Peaceful as Hell by the Black Dresses. I really hope that they're doing okay in regards to all the weird TikTok stuff that was happening that led to their inevitable breakup. For the number 15 slot, we have Boldy James with Manger at McNichols. Unfortunately, there's a fair amount of albums that are a massive amount of years in the making that come out relatively half-baked. This is not that at all. Boulding and Sterling give us one of the most lyrically and instrumentally dense rap albums I've ever heard, or even albums in general, really. There's just a certain level of bluntness and honesty that's just oozing from every crack and crevice of this project, and I think it turned out wonderfully. Number 14, we have Dan Deacon with his beautiful electronic album Mystic Familiar. For the number 13 slot, we have Kid Cudi with Man on the Moon 3, The Chosen. Once again, we've been waiting for this album for like 10 years, and it came out so well refined. Cudi has some of his best vocal performances on this album, both in terms of a singer and as a rapper. Even though this is Kid Cudi we're talking about, I think he really went above and beyond in nailing the exact aesthetics this album needed to maintain for it to be as good as it is. Overall, this is just one of very, very few projects that feels like it's lived up to the general hype that's been perceived around it. For number 12, we have Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats with Unlocked. Honestly, the main thing holding this one back from being higher on the list is how short it is. With that being said, one of the reasons this project is so good is because of how short it is, which leads to exactly no filler, no low moments. It's just back to back to back fucking bangers. Zell has some of his best one-liners on this project. Kenny Beats does an amazing job producing. It's just such a packed 20-minute listen. For number 11, I went with Soccer Mommy with her new album Color Theory. While unfortunately another year came and went with no new Beach House project, this is close enough. Now, I'm not saying Sophie sounds the same as Beach House. I'm not saying she's ripping Beach House off. Honestly, they're very different sonically, but in terms of the general tones it exudes, the general moods that I take on, and the overall feeling I have listening to this project, it's very similar. I think one of the most notable things about Sophie's writing is the way she structures her songs is often very unconventional, which to most people might seem like just kind of a cool little nifty note. I think it adds a lot to the uniqueness of her songwriting and sound, which is a really big reason why I love this project so much. Not only does it sound beautiful, but nothing else really sounds exactly like it. She just does such a great job weaving in influences from both generally alternative indie rock and mainstream pop. We are finally at the top 10, and to start off this section of the list, we have Rap Ferreira with Purple Moonlight Pages. Over the course of the past year, this has very easily become one of my favorite jazz rap projects. The jazz influence is not only heard throughout the production, but the way Ferreira constructs his bars almost feels like a very free-flowing and loose solo with words, basically, and it's just perfectly complemented by this incredibly soothing bass and organ synth-oriented production style. For number 9, we have Ka with Descendants of Cain. The amazing thing about the way Ka constructs all of his albums is that it's never going to feel old or worn out no matter how long he does it. Because every album is so stylistically and aesthetically unique from each other. And that's in large part due to the amazing production in some of these projects. Even if I removed the title from the context of the record, it would still feel so distinctly biblical in its production. And as always, the lyrical content does such an amazing job of tying Ka's history and his past with the themes of the Cain and Abel story. Because of just how free-flowing and non-rhythmic everything Ka says is, it really solidifies that he's honestly more of a poet than he is a rapper. And that poetry, combined with every other element that makes his music amazing, hits just the right amount on this project. At number 8, we have The Flaming Lips with American Head. I'm so happy we got another good Flaming Lips project. This feels a lot more like Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots in just the general tone of being sad but also being somewhat uplifting at the same time. And that's just a compliment to how the songwriting fits into these themes of the depressing aspects behind the euphoria of narcotics and drugs. For my number 7 slot, we have Benny the Butcher with Burden of Proof. I guess I got what I asked for, didn't I? If I'm being completely transparent, this is not at all how I expected this project to turn out. I hadn't really been following Benny's evolution over the past couple years up until the point where the project came out, but I was fully expecting like Tana Talk 3, but again, which I wouldn't have been opposed to another Tana Talk 3, don't get me wrong, but this was just so unexpected, with the uplifting, beautiful soul samples that are completely contrasted with incredibly dark and somber lines, like the one about not being able to look at his nephew because it reminds him of his brother. Like, holy shit. In terms of lyrical ability, in terms of technical proficiency as a rapper, it's very on par with A King to a God, but I think for me, the production is what stands them apart so much. This is probably my favorite Griselda-related project so far, and I really hope each of them keeps pushing their individual envelopes, because I think they have a lot of potential to be some of the greatest of all time if they do. Now, before we move on to number 6, I do need to clarify something. I'm not the biggest fan of the Strokes. I know. As a white dude from New York, many would consider it almost sacrilegious for me to say that, but I will stand by my opinion. I'm just going to ask you, you keep that one between us so I don't get burned at the stake when I leave my house next time. Now, with that said, I do really love the new Abnormal. The biggest reason for this is at numerous points it's just not a Strokes album. While you do have tracks like The Adults Are Talking, which I like a lot, and Bad Decisions, which I don't like very much, most of this project feels like a fully explored detour rather than one that they half embarked on but still wanted to stick to their regular stuff. All of the best tracks on this project are such amazing tracks, some of the best tracks the Strokes have ever written. I really hope they keep following this avenue of songwriting rather than going back to Is This It era, which I don't think they will. They seem to have a lot of motivation to keep pushing their sound rather than reverting back. I've noticed that throughout most of their career, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they manage to make next. For the number 5 slot, we have 070 Shake with Modus Vivendi, one of my favorite alternative R&B singers. On one hand, you have a lot of those very earwormy tracks like Guilty Conscience and Rocket Ship. On the other hand, though, you have such uniquely written songs like The Pines and Terminal B and Flight 319, right? Yeah, I was right. While a handful of the tracks were kind of disappointing, there really wasn't one that I actively don't like on this project, and I just think that level of consistency, especially for a debut LP release, is really astonishing, honestly. For number 4, we have LP and Killer Mike with Run the Jewels 4. They pulled out 2 Chainz, they pulled out Zach De La Roca, they pulled out Josh Homme, they pulled out Pharrell, they pulled out fucking everyone for this project. All of this just culminates into a project that will leave you sitting there going, holy shit. There really was no better time for them to give us a project like this because the political messages and ideologies shown in this project were very necessary for the time it came out. Not to say that it's not still just as equally necessary because nothing's got better, in fact things might have gotten worse, but It could not have come a moment too soon. Now for number 3, we have, rest in peace, Mac Miller with his posthumous release, Circles. The fact that I, a person that has very, very little nostalgic connection to Mac Miller, rank this album as high as I do should be such an amazing testament to the quality of songwriting and performance ability and self-awareness and lyrical genius that is this album. This album kind of feels like the acceptance stage of the 5 stages of grief. For how depressing it is to hear this person that unfortunately lost their battle with addiction talk about these very same things, there's also a level of clarity and closure that comes in with him almost conveying to his fans that he's okay. And I think the overall reception, the general love, and the amount of impact he had on the people that he did just really goes to show some of the most fantastic qualities of not just music but entertainment as a whole. Not just on the creator end but on the consumer's end as well. And it just makes me very hopeful that the story of someone like Mac Miller will always live on in the people that cared about him and loved him. For number 2, we have one of the greatest feats in terms of songwriting this year, and that is Perfume Genius with Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. There was not a dull moment on this project. Not fucking one. The evolution of Perfume Genius's songwriting capabilities from Put Your Back Into It to this are astonishing. Not to say Put Your Back Into It isn't a good project. It's amazing, but it's a lot less innovative and is much more narrow-minded in terms of tone and aesthetic than this. And I think it just deserves all the credit in the world for how diverse it is, but how unified it still feels as a fully cohesive project. Finally, for number 1, we have an album many of you probably haven't listened to before, and that is Chester Watson with a Japanese horror film. Now you see, I'm a very simple man. I like deep, strong bass. I like hypnotic vocal performances. I like gorgeous hooks. I like a theme of both production and lyrical quality that carries through a whole project, and this album has all of them without skipping a fucking beat. Every track that's so intensely serene and introspective is mirrored by the one that's still very low-key and subtle, but also fucking evil at the same time. While the production can be slightly rough at moments, Chester does such a great job of carrying this aesthetic and ambiance throughout the whole project and just keeping everything feeling so fresh despite carrying a lot of the same elements. And as I mentioned earlier, the bass on some of these tracks is so deep but so clean at the same time. Listening to this album feels almost like a full body experience. Even removing all of these amazing elements, the fact that I've probably listened to this album at least 30 times since it came out, there's no possible way I can't not put that amount of time at number 1, because I very clearly fucking like it. And to clarify, it's been out for less than 2 months, so I think no debate, this was my album of the year. Thank you guys so much for watching. I was tracking every album that I listened to throughout the year, so I've been thinking about making this video since January, so hopefully it came out well. We'll see in the post-production edit, I guess, but thank you so much for watching. As I said, if you want to talk to me about it, head down in the comments, agree, disagree, call me a dipshit, whatever you would like. I'm always happy to discuss things like this with you guys. Hopefully I'll come up with some new video ideas soon. If not, see you in like 2 fucking months, I guess. Yeah, have a great New Year's Day, hopefully, if I get this out in time.